All right, so 55 people. It's 10:00 something. Soft start Tuesday, second day of the conference, or third day, because we started Friday with pre-conference workshops. Very exciting. I'm Brian. I'm one of the volunteers. We've got a lot of board members on here, and folks logging in early for Chad Littlefield. Last year, many of you were in attendance and saw Chad and Will Wise deliver stuff that I'm still using today. And so, in fact, I've got a blog post coming out today where I've outlined some of Chad's ideas here at Ohio State with the Fisher College of Business. I'm just spreading the gospel because it's good, fun stuff. So, Chad, soft start, take it away, baby. And thank you so much for coming back.
Yeah, it's a joy. It's a joy to be on here. So I'm seeing a handful of people. There's a lovely Zoom setting that allows you to hide all. Zoom calls them non-video participants. I'm going to call you not flies on the wall. And a fishbowl is lovely in Zoom, but I'm going to call you lovingly termites, because as termites, you have the ability to come out of the woodwork. And so at least for, if you're in your long underwear or whatever, feel free to not come out of the woodwork. But for at least this little connection before content segment that I'm going to do, I'm going to invite you all to engage. And so it will be more normal to have your video on, and gallery view will become like Brady Bunch times 100, and that's okay. We will eventually be splitting out into breakouts a little bit. But welcome, termites. It's lovely to see you. I can't see your legs, but I believe you have 6 of them. Somebody else probably knows how many legs termites actually have. So like Brian said, I'm Chad Littlefield. I wanted to be Patch Adams when I was a little kid. I saw the movie with Robin Williams, and I had my life figured out. I was going to go to med school, become a doctor, and really connect with patients. And then I took a chemistry class at Penn State, and I said, okay, maybe this isn't going to work so much, and shifted gears a little bit. And so I still, I would say, am being Patch Adams, working with universities all around the country and organizations around the world, but not with a scalpel. My scalpel is this lovely little connection toolkit. So many of you have used maybe the We Connect cards with the question cards and a handful of our other tools. Nice, Jill, holding them up. Bonus pride if you've got them on your desk. That's good work. Yeah, a number of tools, and then my co-founder Will and I put together a book called Ask Powerful Questions, Create Conversations That Matter. Not a relevant topic at all right now in our country, creating conversations about difficult things to talk about. So my intention for our short time today is to give you a master's degree in, or a second PhD in connection before content in less than 20 minutes. So the really condensed version, but I want to do it very experientially because there's a guy, I can't believe his name is escaping me right now, out of Harvard, who's a physicist. And he basically quit his day job and travels around and does faculty development at universities all around the country. And he just shows a bunch of EEGs, electroencephalograms. I think I'm saying that right, but I didn't go to med school. Electroencephalograms, which is basically the hairnet, right, that measures brain activity. And he shows these EEGs from high activity to low activity. So highest activity, things that involve movement, exercise, complex problem solving tasks. One of the lowest ones, as you might imagine, is sleeping, right? Although there's a decent amount of activity still there. Below, and I'm gonna potentially offend somebody here, but I'm gonna do it on purpose and with love, and then offer some suggestions on how to proceed. So below sleeping on electroencephalocardiogram activity is attending a university lecture. Whoa, that's pretty intense, right? That's pretty intense to think about the way that we learn, taking in information. It doesn't mean that people don't learn from lectures. It just means that our brain activity is lower and that there's value in mixing up methods. And so connection before content is a really, really great way to stimulate lots of brain activity, which primes the brain for learning, makes learning easier, etc. So I'm seeing some of you are having a blast with in the chat solving some of the puzzles. Some of you might be the type of people that like can't attend the rest of the day without solving the 6 of these. I'll disappoint you now by saying I'm not going to give you the answers. One more unofficial start, and I'll unpack this term, which came from an awesome guy named Mark Collard in Australia. But one more unofficial start that I want to kick out with is in the chat. Go ahead and type in what has been taking your response to what has been taking up lots of your brain space lately. Really have a little think about that. Sometimes the art of presenting virtually is reminding ourselves that silence is one of the great arts of conversation. So when you give a prompt like this, you don't always have to fill the space like I'm doing right now. So something really neat is happening right now that cannot happen in person. So I think we've been living in quarantine for long enough that we've gotten used to Zoom. Maybe we've gone through some burnout of Zoom. We've gone through this whole little era and journey. When Zoom and Skype and Google Hangouts and all this stuff was created, they were created with the question in mind, how can we make this most like being in person? And I think that's fundamentally a broken question. I think the better question to ask is actually, how can we make this better than being in person? Because it's not in person. None of you have legs right now, right? I'm only seeing 18% of your nonverbal feedback. In fact, I'm not even seeing you all on my same screen, right? So there's all this data that's lost, but there are some things that we can do virtually that we can't do in person. And that's really interesting for me to explore. So I know this, my session's not focused all around virtual engagement and presentation, but what's happening right now is we're all speaking at the same time using the chat. And then round 2 of this unofficial start would be listen at scale, scroll up through the chat and see what other people are thinking about, what's taking up people's brain space. So with a quick scroll, I have a whole heap more data about what's going on your end of the world. So people have family members who have nearly passed away, the impact of protests, pondering what our white privilege means and what that is, police brutality. There's some intense stuff in the chat right now. So if I was to just go back to our little fun puzzles, that would be awfully jarring if you've been thinking about and considering police brutality for the last 72 hours. And so an unofficial start like this allows you to check in with your audience and meet them where they're at in a very, very quick way. Now, I told you the term I got from an awesome guy out of Australia named Mark Collard, who's a friend. He created a website called Plamio.com. I'll enter it into the chat. And it's a giant database of collaborative learning exercises, video tutorials that you can sort by virtual, in-person, group size, the purpose of your meeting, and there's 500 plus interactive experiential exercises. It's this like phenomenal resource if you haven't explored it. Anyway, the way that he defines unofficial start is something that ideally begins 1 to 10 minutes before the official start. So in this case, 10 a.m. Eastern time was our official start, and goes into 5 to 10 minutes after the official start time. And that's really important because usually we reward people for being late, right? We like, oh, Jim's not here. Let's just give it another minute, see if he turns up. This rewards people for being early by sparking immediate and purposeful engagement before you even begin. Ideally purposeful, right? So you don't like this. I might not use with a group like you typically if I was really going to facilitate a longer session, because I could connect it to purpose. I could frame, that, okay, we're solving 6 problems here, but there's 50 some people on the call and we're all solving our own problems. And so I can frame that, but ideally something that begins 5 to 10 minutes beforehand, goes 5 or so minutes after the official start, and sparks immediate purposeful engagement. It could be a question inviting in the chat. It could be inviting people into conversation if they're in person together. It could be a quick activity. It could be a puzzle that you found at Barnes and Noble's. There is an infinite amount of creative ways that you can immediately engage people. but I can guarantee that if people are immediately and purposefully engaged before you start, any content that you have rolling out of your mouth afterward will actually sink into people's brains at a much higher degree than if not, right? So ironically enough, we're talking about connection before content, and I'm giving you a bunch of content about unofficial starts before we've connected. So as an odd way of officially starting and adding some depth, I'm going to invite you to find the ability to rename yourself. It depends on what device you're on, so I'm not going to give a bunch of tech tutorials, but for most people in gallery view, you can find your own face and hover over your own face and click the 3 dots, the little options, more options, and you can find the ability to click rename. So before you decide that you want to just rename yourself with something random, my invitation is to add some depth to Zoom. Zoom and meeting virtually is this 2-dimensional format. Literally, you all are a few millimeters thick on my screen, right? To add some depth, I'm going to invite you to change your name to be your first name, hyphen, and then one word that some of your closest friends or family members might use to describe you. So for me, if you want to look at mine as an example, I'm going to type Chad. People say that I'm quite curious. I ask a lot of questions of
Hey,
people.
Chad, I think it's disabled. Sorry.
It is disabled. Security, enable, rename themselves. You now have the ability to rename yourself. Thank you. So for those of you who are curious what just happened on my end, there's a little security button on Zoom now when you're the host, and you click it and you just have to enable people to rename themselves. Cool. All right. Head nods if you have the ability to rename yourself. Yeah, I'm seeing cooperative Kenny. Oh, Kenny, I kind of like it before. I did a hyphen afterward, but like curious Chad, sort of could be confused with curious George, but curious Chad has a better ring to it than Chad hyphen curious. That's a fun learning. So go ahead and rename yourself if you haven't, and if you're really struggling, like let it go. If technology is ever in the way, my invitation is to just move it out of the way. But there's something really cool that's happening right now, because typically I can only see 18% of your non-verbals and I don't get much data. So I actually invite people when they're sharing on Zoom to like not pay too much attention to gallery view and actually connect with the camera more often. But now when I look through the gallery view, I see that Jill, I don't see just Jill with a handful of pixels and her background. I see Jill as an adventurous person. And so that gives me a little bit of context, a little bit of depth. It makes an otherwise 2-dimensional format a little bit more 3-dimensional. I know that Grace is a good listener. I know that Jeff's last name is Pell. Maybe he's still looking for the rename feature. Hi, Jeff, by the way. Right, so it just adds a little element there. Now what I'd like to do is get us out of our virtual bubble. Typically in Zoom, we spend all of our time in caveman or cavewoman position, right? We're like hunched over. We never leave this 3-foot bubble. NACDEP conference is here. I'm gonna invite you right now to take 60 seconds to go grab, and before you leave, go grab an object that represents a piece of who you are. That is different than grab an object that you like or something that your son gave you that's kind of cool. Choose an object that represents a piece of who you are. So leave your virtual bubble. Timer starts now. You've got 60 seconds. Bring the object back, but don't hold it up to the camera. Don't show it. So find an object that represents a piece of who you are. Bring it back, but don't show us quite yet. What I love about Kyle's screen right now is that Kyle, who's independent, looks like she's at like the top of Haleakala volcano in Hawaii or something, just living on a mountain on her own, his own. I haven't met Kyle yet, and she's gone. So I think I might have missed this. Dan's asking to restate the instructions. They should be screen shared, but just for anybody who is thinking about donuts, taking 60 seconds to go grab an object that represents a piece of who you are, bringing it back. All right. So everybody's, for the most part, back. On the count of 3, hold your object up to the screen. And my invitation is to be curious. So look around gallery view, click through, scroll through if you need to, and be curious about what other people are holding. 3, 2, 1. Nice. All right. Seems to be I'll grab some some intriguing objects and some like water bottles and just some regular things. So there's some creative things happening here. What I would love to do now is split us up out into breakouts to have a quick share where you get to share your object and your connection to it. I'm mindful of the time here. I don't have much left, so they're going to be short breakouts. I'm going to make them small. If you're one of the termites, I mean non-video participants, right now, you're going to be thrust into a breakout room as well. One other tech comment: if you've somehow joined your audio via your phone, but your video via your computer, breakout Zoom doesn't care. They think you're 2 people, and you might get split and divided into 2 separate breakout rooms. If that happens, I would go with your audio and just shut off your video. Again, I'm going to make these smaller breakouts for time's sake, and you're going to have 1 minute or less each to share. Just for fun, because it might be useful to some of you, I'm going to share my screen. For those of you who haven't led breakouts, I've let something happen that allows you to see my Zoom controls. So you should be seeing my room or my Zoom. So I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on this, but you'll just see how I set them up in case you haven't done them yourself. So just going to more, click breakout rooms. You can change the number of rooms, which changes the number of people in each room. For this case, I want about 3 people per room because I'm only gonna do this breakout for 3 minutes, 1 minute each to share your object and the part of you that it represents. And again, the purpose here is to just create a little bit of connection before content. Do not get lost in the Brady Bunch of Zoom. So when I click create breakout rooms, it's going to give me a series of options. Well, first of all, you'll see the breakout. So you get to, like gym class, you get to see where you're going to wind up. There's an option menu here that's really important that I'm happy to send a screenshot out. These are my preferred options for breakouts. Automatically send you, so it doesn't ask your permission. It doesn't allow any of you to return to the main session other than co-hosts, which is important because 90% of people accidentally leave a breakout room and it's like, oops. And I like the 30-second countdown, meaning if you haven't experienced breakouts by chance, when I click end breakout rooms, you'll see a 30-second countdown and the system will automatically port you back. And so don't worry about being lost in cyberspace. It'll automatically shove you into a breakout room and automatically put you back. It's a great feature. There's also some problems with that because it removes people's autonomy. But for right now, I'm going to click open all rooms. You've got 3 minutes to share your object, or 1 minute to share your object and the part of you that it represents. And I'll bring you back for a quick wrap up recap of connection before content and send you on your merry way. Cool. Thumbs up if we're ready for this. Quick thumbs up. Nice. All right, here we go. See ya. All right. Beautiful. So as everybody's coming back on, you should see the one of my favorite questions, one of my favorite facilitator questions on the planet, because it allows people who tend to experience the world through emotions and people who tend to experience the world through logic and reason to both answer. So I'm curious, in the chat, what struck you about those conversations? They were extremely short. They were really short breakouts. But what'd you notice? What struck you about those conversations? And just pop that in the chat. And as you're doing that, I'll try to be mindful of time here. To wrap up really quickly, connection before content is this idea. If we didn't meet in Asheville when I presented live, so I'm just gonna give you 2 really essential ingredients that differentiate connection before content from just a connection activity or any sort of icebreaker or a frivolous icebreaker or anything like that. Connection before content ideally connects to the purpose of why you are there, which most icebreakers do not. And second, it allows people to connect to each other. I'm assuming that many of you have experienced lots of Zoom lately that does not meet either of those criteria, right? Or that a session begins without either of those criteria. It's not something that has to take a long time. It can take 2 minutes or less. Even just saying, hey, what are 2 words to describe your current state of mind right now? There's a lot going on in the country. Type that into the chat to get a pulse check. That can be a powerful 1-minute version of connection before content, right? So to honor the rest of what you've got today, just really quickly, I didn't share lots about who I am, but I exist on the planet to make connection easy in the world. And so if there's a way that I can support you or your programs, your institutions, this link right here at the bottom, we give a ton of free resources away. So there's a free lo-fi digital version of our We Connect cards, which have a bunch of really awesome questions that you can use for connection. There are some resource and video tutorials around how to use the We Engage cards, an excerpt from our book, Ask Powerful Questions, and it's all for free. You just trade your email and it gets sent to you. You get a page, access to everything. And once in a blue moon, Will, my co-founder, and I send out an email that's intentionally useful to support making connection easy in whatever context you find yourself.